I often hear stories about how people can't afford to eat healthy foods. A lot of times, even when those healthy foods are cheaper than the junk foods, people still say it, and when I point out the price difference, then they shift their goalposts, right? I don't have the time to cook. And then I show them that, well, look at how much time you spend on such and such, right? I think healthy eating would be a better investment. And then they change the goalposts again, right? My kids won't eat it. Okay, you don't want to eat it. Stop coming up with excuses. But let me show you why it's actually very inexpensive. And in fact, it's pretty expensive to eat junk food. So a lot of people comment on how much money I spend on healthy foods. And sometimes the funniest derogatory comment I sometimes hear is that it produces expensive urine, meaning that a lot of it ends up going down the toilet, I suppose. Well, but let me show you an example of how expensive it could be to eat healthy foods in the worst case. So imagine you have two hypothetical twins, person A and person B, and we're going to start when they're 18 years old. And notice how I put age in quotation marks. Why? I'm talking about the age that shows on their ID, not their physical abilities, not their health status, but the age that the government will recognize them as, right? Which is a lie in my opinion, but that gives us a reference point to talk about some of this. Now, person A is your standard American diet guy. And he doesn't waste, quote unquote, waste money on healthy foods. And so he puts $6,000 into his retirement account each year. Now, person B, quote unquote, wastes $3,000 a year on healthy foods. And so he puts $3,000 in his retirement account. Now, I'll let you ponder this. Who's going to have more money at retirement? Think carefully. It was a trick question. What happens when you eat unhealthy foods? Well, you have unhealthy outcomes, right? So person A, by the age of 60, develops a health problem and is forced into retirement. And he dies by the age of 80. I think these are pretty typical numbers, I would say. Now, person B might not have the same medical problems until he's 80 years old and dies at 100. Now, I know some people are going to say I'm boasting here. There's no way there's that big of a difference. I challenge that. Smoking takes 14 years off of your life expectancy. There are a lot of habits that are worse than smoking that I see every day. And people sometimes combine that with smoking anyway, right? So you take somebody who's a smoker and who eats the standard American diet compared to somebody who doesn't smoke and consumes superfoods. I think there's a good chance there's a 20-year difference easily, right? Sometimes, to give you an idea, sometimes when I go out in public, right? Obviously not this year because of COVID-19, but in the past I've talked about how I want to look for my future wife. A lot of times, some girl really is interested in me, but on paper, she's like 15 years younger than me, right? That's not unusual, by the way. Really goes to show the big gap that I'm already creating between my ID age and my physical age, right? Which is a big problem, by the way, because I do want to meet people who are my paper age, because I want the wisdom that comes with years of experience, right? You don't necessarily get years of wisdom just by being healthy if on paper you're only 18, right? That's a big problem in my opinion. Not that it's not nice to communicate with some of these people, but I actually want to meet some material that's meaningful of marriage, right? Okay. So person B has more time to invest. I think most people can appreciate that. There's another subtle difference. The other subtle difference is that if you have a longer investment horizon window, you can invest much more aggressively as well. So if you open up your 401k, sometimes they have a feature saying that I want to invest for my age, right? I never select that because if it did it for my paper age, it would invest way too conservatively, right? I invest more like an 18-year-old because I can, right? So fast forward until retirement. Now person A has roughly $1.1 million. Person B has $4.7 million. Actually, I forgot to mention, to make things simple, all of these numbers are adjusted for inflation. Obviously, over time, you're going to contribute more than $6,000 or $3,000. And so I've adjusted the growth rate for inflation as well. So all of these numbers are in today's numbers. Now, so I want you to ponder that for a second. Your smoking and standard American diet habits are costing you $4 million in retirement. Now, obviously, it's a habit that you carry from 18 to 80. Over 60 years, your unhealthy habits are costing you $4 million. Let's get out the calculator. $4 million divided by 60. $67,000 a year. Now imagine somebody comes up to you with $67,000 in a suitcase and says, I'll make you an offer. You change your habits for 1 year. No cigarettes, no standard American diet, and this is yours to do whatever you want with it. I want you to ponder that image in your head. I mean, it's your free choice. We live in America, but I want you to make a rational choice given that image in your head. Okay, well, let's take a look at what that means in retirement. How fast can you draw down that money? Well, person A, who's eating a standard American diet, smoking cigarettes, he gets to draw down $98,085 a year and ends up with zero when he's 80 years old. Not bad. Let's look at person B. $413,500. That would put him in the 1%, by the way. I think 98,000 only puts you in the 5%. So imagine that. Now take this image in your head. I want you to think about how the lifestyle of a 1% and the lifestyle of a 5%. I think there's a big gap as well. And I want you to ponder somebody. This time you gotta imagine it as a God, right? God comes up to you and says, I can give you this lifestyle or I can give you that lifestyle, and the choice is yours to make. Do you still want your cigarettes and your standard American diet? And I want you to, that one's a little bit harder to imagine. That's a little bit more abstract, right? But which one would you choose? Given how much quote-unquote joy your standard American diet and your cigarettes give you, I would imagine a lot of that is illusionary, by the way, but given how much perceived joy you get out of that, which one would you choose? And I'm not trying to force a decision on you. I'm just laying out the options for you here. Anyways, I have a funny story about the expensive urine, by the way. When I was 21 years old, I had just moved out of my parents' home to go work on my PhD. And I was in such a good mood that I had gotten a 24-pack of my favorite non-alcoholic beer. It was Beck's beer, by the way. And I was celebrating on the way from Pittsburgh to Rochester. It's like a 6-hour drive. I was celebrating by drinking the non-alcoholic beer. And by the time I got to campus in Rochester, I was driving overnight. And I got to the campus in the morning for a meeting. And I raced into the bathroom to urinate, and I was in such a rush to urinate that most of it went on the floor. And I remember thinking that, my friend had just commented on the expensive urine. That was some pretty expensive urine because the beer was not cheap, if I remember correctly. It was about, for the 24-pack, it was about $20 or so. And so I remember thinking about my friend's comment on expensive urine. And I ended up doing very well during my, I had trouble at school, but I ended up graduating and I got relatively good grades and I landed my dream job. And so I remember thinking that it was really lucky to urinate on the floor. And so my first day at where I'm now teaching at Washington Technology University, before my job interview, I made myself drink a 2-liter bottle of green tea. And so when I got to the interview, I went to the bathroom, and I did very well at the interview. I got the job. I'm still working there today. And so that was a pretty good investment, right? The expensive urine that I invested. That's just superstition there, but you get the idea, right? I think as long as you're enjoying what you're eating and drinking and it's healthy for you, I don't think that your urine's going to be all that expensive. If anything that destroys your body, right? Anything that... I liken it to if you did something... Like some people like to drive their car really aggressively, right? And it damages their car. They get less miles out of it. I liken it to that, right? When you eat junk food or you miss sleep or you eat with your hands, right? I talked about that in a previous video, or any number of bad habits, right? Just think of it as doing damage to your car or some other toy that you might have, right? Thanks for watching.